Find out. Peace, everybody. Welcome to Capital Combat. The name says it all. I'm Hakeem Rob, and today we're going to recap this past Saturday's boxing pay-per-view, which involved Saul Canelo Alvarez versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And we'll also talk about some of the events that happened after the fight, which we'll get into once we get through the actual fight. So, take it away, Rob.
Okay, so we had Saul Canelo Alvarez versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. for what was supposed to be the #1 fighter out of Mexico and possibly the next opponent for Gennady Triple G Golovkin. What we got was a very lackluster, one-sided fight. I'm not going to say beatdown because it was 12 rounds, but the score was 120 to 108 or 108. Yeah. It was a complete whitewash. Julio Cesar Chavez forgot that he had to show up and fight instead of just showing up. And maybe the game plan was a little bit different, a little bit unfamiliar with him, because we know Chavez to be this come forward, volume, hit you wherever he can type fighter, and he'll take 2 or 3 to get 1. What we got is him being with the new coach, Nacho Barristan, who was opting to have him box. And you could see that he was trying to box because he was trying to throw a jab and maintain space between him and Canelo. What that showed was that Canelo was being the aggressor, which we're actually kind of used to him being. But Canelo was out of his, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. was out of his element. And I think there might have been some disconnect. He might have been tentative about what Canelo was doing, or just unable to throw due to the weight loss. Granted, this is probably the most efficient weight loss he's had in years, but the fact is, it's hard for him with that huge frame to get under 168 and to get to 164.5. Those last few pounds, if you know anything about weight loss, could be hell, even if it's a pound or 2. And he had to lose 3.5 to get down to something that he hasn't been in since, what, the Sergio Martinez fight?
Yeah, that was, shoot, what year was that? It was, what, like 2012?
Yeah, it was almost 5 years ago, more than likely. We'll probably just go ahead and look up the date and put it in the annotations below. But that might have taken a toll on him, where he just did not have the energy. And I would hazard a guess that he was between 180 and 185 pounds for that fight.
Yeah, and really, because we can only opine on what we saw and speculate, but I think it might have been a combination of all those things. The weight, him not being familiar with that style that he was learning, the skills of Alvarez, like all of that stuff put together just completely handcuffed Chavez, and he wasn't able to do or just look effective at all. And even in his punches, it looked like he was pushing his punches rather than snapping them. There was no kind of power on them. And on the opposite side, you had Canelo Alvarez looking like Floyd Mayweather in there. I mean, he was hitting them almost at will, reeling off combinations, showing deft footwork, showing excellent angles, varying punches. It looked like everything that he wanted to work on in the gym got worked on in the fight. And while that's a very good thing to have happen, it's a hard thing to analyze when you don't have someone who is as willing a participant as you are. Like, you have somebody that's like making you work to get your punches off and do your things that you worked on in the gym, as opposed to somebody who's kind of just standing there confused and you just like, oh, I'm gonna hit you with a 4-punch right hand combination. And he does it. Like, a willing participant doesn't really let you do that.
And you have to find a way to do that. That's how you get that experience and learn what to do, when to do it, and you become a better fighter. And granted, he's probably in the top, he's a top 10 pound for pound, possibly even top 5, depending on whose list that you look at. And with Canelo, he needs those rounds because his opponents are just going to get more difficult, especially at a higher weight class.
Right. And after 50, this was his 52nd fight at 26 years old?
53rd.
53rd, yeah, he's 49, 1-1.
No, well, he's 51 and He was 51-1-1 now. He was
50.
he was 50.
49.
Yeah, he was 51-1 coming into the fight.
Okay. I thought it was 49. My bad. But
I mean, I could be
either
wrong.
way,
We'll probably look it up anyway.
that's a ton of fights for somebody to be 26 years old. And so he has the experience well there to dig into if he really needs to. And he showed that on Saturday night. Like I said, he showed excellent footwork. He showed a great set of angle usage. He showed great combinations. Things that we knew he had. He showed great upper body movement. It was just kind of disappointing that Chavez didn't bring more out of him. Or, you know, maybe Canelo could have pushed harder for a stoppage. But you never know. Like, he could have hurt his hands beating on Chavez's face so much.
It's happened before.
Right. And I wouldn't be surprised if we find out in the coming weeks that he may have had like a bruise or some kind of injury or something to his hands in the next week following this fight. So really, that's it as far as like the meat of the fight. Canelo did a great job varying up how he threw his right hand. He would overhand into an uppercut and vice versa, overhand into a body shot into an uppercut. Those things were very nice to see him do. It's just, like I said earlier, it would have been better to see him like have to work against somebody who's like really trying to hurt him as opposed to against someone who's like super confused and kind of tired in there.
Yeah, you need to have some form of resistance in order to really get that real work to move on to the next fight. Just like with sparring, you want enough resistance to get you to work, to formulate a game plan, and to get used to what your opponent may or may not do in the ring on fight night. Right. He did not get that. But it doesn't matter because now he's set up to fight Gennady Triple G Golovkin September 16th.
Yeah. And that's the fight, like we said in the preview video, that the fans have been asking for probably for the last year and a half.
When Canelo started campaigning at 155 and didn't know if he wanted to be a middleweight or a junior middleweight.
Right.
And they called it Canelo weight.
Yeah.
Hilarious name, but it's neither here nor there.
Right. So, preliminary thoughts on that. Like, we're not putting out like official predictions right now because there's a long way between the cup and the lip, as they like to say. But just based on what we've seen from these two guys so far, this should be a very interesting fight. We've got Golovkin, who is coming off a debated decision against Danny Jacobs. We've got Canelo, who just pretty much embarrassed Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. But recently, we've had that unstoppable destroyer mystique of Gennady Golovkin kind of broken and washed away by Kell Brook and Danny Jacobs. And so now guys are really getting confident in facing him, which isn't the best thing to have when you're not the biggest middleweight and you're getting up there in age and you're really trying to get those big fights so you can get out of the sport. But in Alvarez, he has a smaller guy. And most of the times, he was fighting bigger guys. Mm-hmm. So here's another fight where the size can come into play depending on how Alvarez puts on those few little pounds that it takes to get from the previous weight class, or he was actually above the weight class for this previous fight, into this fight. That nutrition, that work is going to be paramount into the preparation of fighting Golovkin. What do you think about so far?
Well, again, it's going to be a good fight right now. If I had to say, I give the edge to Golovkin just out of, I'm not going to say experience, but being a more natural middleweight and not having to have that cut where Canelo is still finding his way to get to that point. Yeah, he was at 164.5, but we don't really know how he felt, how much snap it took off, and how he'll be able to manage coming back down to 160. even at his last fight at 154 and sometimes at 155, he looked just good enough to be effective on fight night. With this one, you're talking about a guy who can come in at 158 if he wanted to. But this should be at the full middle 160 pound middleweight limit.
Right, it is.
It's going to be a very important fight to both of them, because that not only, I would hazard to say that the winner of this fight will become #1 pound for pound, just based off resumes. And this is over Sergey Kovalev, who, regardless of who wins the Sergey Kovalev-Andre Ward fight, at this point.
Unless they like go out there and completely wreck their opponent.
Oh yeah, then that's something different.
And
like
Kovalev goes out there and knocks Ward out in like 4 to 5 rounds, or vice versa. If Ward comes out there and stops Kovalev, that's going to be a big time, like, not only a shocker, but like an eye opener, like, oh, we've been thinking this guy's good, but he's really good.
Now, we
don't expect that.
Then we got another month before we talk about that fight, so let's come back on this one.
Which is like 4 to 5 months away.
But just to make it seem like it is a lot of money in this fight, because we know Canelo at this point is probably the 3rd biggest moneymaker out of any, after Mayweather and Pacquiao, as far as pay-per-view revenue.
Yeah.
You know, Golovkin has been on pay-per-view, but they have been lackluster in sales.
Right.
So what I hope for this one is that the promotion is much better as far as getting the casual audience engaged in this. We've seen Canelo, and I've seen him in a bunch of commercials. They put him out there, whether it was Tecate or he's got commercials with Sylvester Stallone.
Under Armour, he's sponsored by them. He has his name out there. It's Golovkin that they have to bring out to the public to show, like, hey, this guy's for real, and he is a credible threat to Saul Alvarez. I know a lot of people, like, you know, when I'm in the gyms and things like that, people who I would think would know, like, they come and they talk to me about boxing and things like that, and then I mention Triple G and they're like, who is that? I'm like, how do you not know who Triple G is?
This guy was destroying cats for like the better part of what, 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, but to the, I guess, mid-level boxing fan, they still don't know who he is. Like, it's only like amongst the hardcore people, and this could be his coming out party for them.
Or they knew who he was and had been unwilling to buy the pay-per-view fights that they've had in the last, what, 1 or 2 or even 3 fights?
Yeah, well, no, he's only had the one against Lemieux and Jacobs for pay-per-view. But yeah, so hopefully that happens, or Canelo stamps his claim as the #1 guy, like Rob said, because if he beats Triple G, who is undefeated, who was on like a 20-fight knockout streak prior to Danny Jacobs, had to dig deep to beat Danny Jacobs, had to dig deep to beat Kell Brook, but then gets beaten by Canelo, that's going to be a huge hit to his reputation and a big, I can't think of the word I'm trying to, but like for the people who like detract from Triple G and like really put him down all the time, that's gonna be that fuel for them to be like, I told you so. I told you he was nothing. Even though they're way off base, but they're gonna say it. And they have faulty evidence to say so, but I mean, they got a little bit.
Hey,
they would have a little bit if he was to lose that fight.
We don't think that at all. I mean, the dude, until proven otherwise,
yeah.
What can we say? The guy's undefeated and has 3 of the 4 major belts.
And he does what he has to do to win, even when it looks a little hairy. So he's done everything we've had to ask of him so far. He's beat the people in front of him. He's beaten them emphatically. He has had to dig deep in his last couple fights.
Which we've actually wanted to see him actually challenge in fights. And he was challenged probably the most in his last fight. And before that, until he got the stoppage, was challenged probably more than any other fighter has. Whereas other guys are trying to survive, these guys can't fight. And that's what we've wanted to see, and he's passed those tests.
Right.
Regardless of what you think about the Danny Jacobs Triple G fight, he still passed the test by getting the W.
Right. Because no matter how you feel it came out, to the people that mattered, he won. So let's find out what happens in this next one. And whoever this guy is cutting grass is really killing the vibe right now. So thanks for watching. Make sure you give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Hit us up on all our social media networks. And we will see you guys in the next video, which is probably, what's my man? Terrence Crawford, Felix Diaz, and Gary Russell and
Oscar Escandón.
That's going to be a pretty packed fight weekend because also Gervonta Davis is fighting Liam Walsh
during the day in England for his newly acquired belt.
Right. So you got a lot of fights on that night. So we'll be back to preview that one. And hopefully we can get a technical toolbox squeezed in there as well, so you can learn you some things and all that good stuff. So until then, fight on.
This is round one, and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is come at a cost. My fists are on fire. I perform till I perspire. My demons are in a rage. Keep thinking that it's a game. I kick crime, hurricane. I told them I don't play. I'm liquid.
Black Street Fighter.